Good morning, everyone. And welcome. You know, the rate of change has never been this fast. And it will never be this slow again. That was actually said by Justin Trudeau at Davos at the World Economic Forum in January of 2018. And he went on to say, you know how you feel as the people in this room. Imagine how the people who are not in this room feel about change. And those are the people we serve. And that's why supercharging the public sector with AI is an objective that can accelerate our objectives overall and give us the promise and the reality of achieving that gap between what our constituencies are worried about and the promise of what this could be. So joining me, I have an amazing panel of experts. Tammy Lee is joining us from Hawaii as the Deputy Director of Department of Transportation. And Tammy has already taught me a great lesson about resiliency. So the next time anyone asks me to join a panel or be part of a presentation, and I think I have too much going on, I will think of you, Tammy, and how you joined today with us. So you know I'm very appreciative of you being here with us and the work we're doing together. Also, we have an opportunity at the end of this session for a moment for Hawaii. So I would ask you, even if you're rushing to the next thing, please stay for that. We hope it'll be a very meaningful moment, so yeah, we look forward to that as well. And also joined by an expert, Joe Larson. And Joe is the Deputy Chief Digital and AI Officer at Department of Defense, arguably the largest IT budget in the world, and I would say, Joe, probably also the most data in the world, and then the potential and possibility of doing something with that in a meaningful way. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
And our third expert is Secretary Amy Tong with the State of California Government Operations. And I felt like Amy's objectives were so relevant for all of us, for Amy, your organization, I wanted to share it with everyone. Her objectives are to accelerate innovation, develop a skilled workforce, and promote results-oriented practices. And for me, those are the same objectives I have for my own team, and I bet for many of you today. So we all have so much to learn about the possibility of this from these experts. So thank you so much for joining. So to get started, I have a lightning round. And you know, you get in these panels and like they've all already seen the questions. That's not the case here, so this should be exciting. So we'll start with Tammy, and this will help the panel to get to know each other. I know Joe is super nervous right now, so watch Joe in particular. Morning person or night owl?
Night owl.
Joe?
Morning person.
Night owl.
Coffee or tea? Start with Amy.
Water.
Coffee.
Coffee.
Barbie or Oppenheimer? Tammy?
Ryan Gosling, so Barbie.
Can we say Barbenheimer and,
You
and
can.
go down the middle?
I ditto that.
Okay, nice. And maybe a question on sort of your hidden talent or something, if we read your bio, we'd never learn about you. Like, tell us a secret. Amy?
Hidden talents do not know how to cook.
Not sure that's a talent, but it's a secret. Not anymore.
I got nothing.
Nothing?
Yeah.
It's speaking like a DOD.
Lack of creativity, I guess.
I'm learning to play the electric guitar, so I told myself, if I learn the Stairway to Heaven solo, then I'll buy myself a Les Paul Gibson guitar.
Wow. This is how you're supposed to do a lightning round. So the last question is AI or security? But of course, I'm not going to have the panel answer this because this is sort of the whole point of the panel. But Google has always been positioned at this intersection of AI and security. Whether you look back at how we approach search, our maps, our translate, we've always interacted and provided products and have such an intuitive user experience that we don't even think about the fact that we're operating at that intersection. And that's that very fundamental piece that we're bringing into use cases in the public sector. Those use cases that help citizens in terms, or our residents in terms of support for services in their language. Those kind of use cases that help government employees with getting through all of the paperwork they have to get through, or maybe in a new skill area where a job application in a skilled area they've never worked with before. Or maybe operational efficiency that really just helps to develop the efficiency, whether that be fraud or whether that getting benefits to citizens or residents faster. I have a couple numbers that there's $140 billion of unclaimed benefits annually in the US. Like, we should be able to address that. 11 billion hours of paperwork burden. And even more when you look at what they call the time tax of people trying to interact with the government. And this is true around the world, and there's no reason for it. This notion of how we access information, which really is an objective of Google's, is Google's mission, to be able to access information and have it be useful, can close these gaps. So to address these gaps, we want to hear what the panel is actually doing. So this notion of accessibility, Tammy, let's start with you. And there's been so much resiliency in Hawaii through the years, through the decades, but also most recently. How has accessibility shaped your strategy and priorities?
So both internal and external. Internal for us on our climate resiliency insights infrastructure platform that we work with Google on. Internally, our project managers, we have policies that say we're to consider resiliency in all of our projects. But our project managers, don't quite know what that means. In 2021, we developed this climate adaptation plan, but it's a static plan. There had some GIS mapping, but partnering with Google to put this platform and put all of the vulnerabilities and all of the strategies just in one spot. Our project managers now can go into this public-facing to make decisions on how or when their projects, long-term, short-term. And for external, for the public, I think the platform shows the whys. We're not going to send the public to look at our climate adaptation plan because it'll bore them to death. But they can see this interactive tool, and they get to know the whys of why we're doing these long-term projects or these short-term projects based on the vulnerabilities through climate change.
It's really powerful to think about accessibility from the standpoint of who we serve and who serves them. So both the end user, if you will, as well as the employees, those are powerful use cases for us. Joe, you approach accessibility in a way, too, in terms of how you've set up this center of excellence to support all of Department of Defense. How has that objective shaped the way you've approached the center?
For anybody that's worked in the DoD, you referenced it's the largest public institution in the world, and accessibility is a tremendous challenge. I think everybody would acknowledge that across the department. I know we're talking about supercharging AI, but my portfolio is mostly the AI portfolio at CDAO, but we spend our time really on data issues, and most of them foundational data issues as the core accessibility challenge across the Department of Defense. When the current leader of the department for data came in 21, there was a data decree signed, and it really has lighted our way. I think when we think about data accessibility, which is the most important thing, we think about both equality of opportunity to access the data, but also thinking about how we enable outcomes through the use of that data in our most important problems and workflows. So, when we established the Chief Digital and AI Office, with really data as the driving consideration, our focus has really been about, enacting that data decree. And, for us, that means how we unlock our data. That there's a number of ways that we're engaged in that today, some of them in partnership with Google and other partners that may be in the room. There's the problem of our systems relying on formats, and we don't incentivize making data available as a product or an asset. So how we do that across all of our initiatives where we buy systems, but then we don't make the data in those systems readily available. We're thinking a lot about our data catalogs and our APIs. We work with Apogee, for example, and the Advana initiative, which we lead in CDAO, is the department's largest data catalog and data sharing initiative in its history, focused on some of those enterprise backends. More to the point, though, on data outcomes, I really think there's 3 levels that we're focused on this. The first is just simply a culture around data that has to change. I've been a program manager, and at no point in the DoD when I was a program manager did anybody approach me and say, how are you making your data accessible and usable? How are you thinking about data as a product? And we need to incentivize that kind of behavior through the way we reward successes and incentivize a culture where people feel like making data available and freely available to do things like AI makes them successful and makes others successful. That's not our culture, and we're thinking a lot about how to change that. And then there's also simply an education piece associated with this. And the education is not just for the existing workforce. There's a talent and recruitment problem that's significant across the DoD. And in CDAO, we're starting a digital talent management branch that's really working through the problem of how we, both better leverage commercial technologies and bring people into the department that understand that culture of data better and can bring it in and change it. I think those are some of the ways we're thinking about the problems of data accessibility in the DoD.
That's really powerful. This notion of data foundationally, the skills, the governance, and importantly, the change management, which maybe that's a good bridge, Amy, to you. So how are you thinking about access and AI, and I think importantly, the key ingredient around change management?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And excuse me. It's, wow, this is the, I guess I need my water probably pretty soon too. Thank you, Christina. As both Tammy and Joe talked about, thank you. How to make your service and data available in an accessible manner. I'll back up a little bit really from a service delivery aspect. Being Google here and we having this huge and a turnout of the Google Next conference, just lots of kudos to the Google team here. Obviously, California is very proud to be the home where Google headquarters. And we have a very progressive governor when it comes to technology and innovation. But when we talk about in the administration, as I'm fortunate to be one of the cabinet member, that this is a constant conversation of his, that what does it mean by technology and innovation when it comes to applying that into governmental service delivery? And that's where, a lot of conversation about human-centered design, we make sure that we do what is most important to our residents, not only the service that they prioritize, but in the way that it's accessible to them. And in this case, accessibility in many fronts, right? From the ease of use, the ease of access, and the ease of understanding if there are information that are provided, how can be utilized. And using an example that we worked through, and I see my Office of Emergency Services team here in Calvert, California, colleague earlier, and I don't know if there's any other state entity in the audience. If you are, raise your hand. I guess that was, there were more. Thank you. Thank you for being here, you guys. That through the COVID response, it was just one of those a demonstration on where there's lots of data that we needed to make available to the health professional, the scientists, the researchers. But if you simply present the data in its raw data form, nobody will understand it. So therefore, you're using a lot of tools to make sure that it's in some simple form as possible, whether it's a dashboard, whether it's a report associated with another narrative, so that our residents can go in there and understand what's going on. But given how diverse California is, single language obviously is not going to do, right? We have a minimum 7 standard language in many of the health space is minimum of 13 languages. Wow. So making that in accessible manner from a language access. And all of that analysis is based on data. So it circles back to making sure that we have good basis of utilization of data in making determinations where we serve, where we prioritize our service, and then use the various tools available to make that happen. So at the end of the day, that change management conversation that we had earlier, right, is not only for the practitioner to understand that is a key, but as well as our program delivery entities to understand that this is the fundamental what we do, making sure that whether it is change management, whether it's access, whether it is language access, we have a single goal, is making governmental services accessible and easily understood by our residents.
I mean, I think it's so powerful, the partnership with Google, with state and federal level that is aimed around accessibility. But on the other side, there's so many places to start. Like, this is such a big mandate for us. How do we select where to start, or what's a good use case? How do you apply the prioritization? Maybe Amy, start with you, and we'll go through the panel on this.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Catherine, my role as government operation, what does that mean, right? I have my colleague here in government operation. We literally had this conversation. Like, for those of us that in the government, we're thinking, okay, this is like running the state of California as like the chief operating officer role. But for public, what does that really mean? I have the responsibility for technology, procurement, workforce development, revenue. For those of you that pay tax, hopefully everybody here, sales tax, income tax, a pension, and as well as many of, we have a new project called Cradle to Career, which is also actually developing from education front, developing somebody's career from looking at that aspect. That's what keeps government running, right? But the end of the day, our agency also supports the climate agency, the environmental agency, the Office of Emergency Services, you name it, to make sure that those front-end services are being provided. So from that aspect, what is government, what is our prioritization, right? We serve the people who serve the residents. So in many cases, we're looking at workforce development. How do we make sure these tools and services are optimally utilized to transform how government delivers? But at the same time, for the program delivery, how do we make sure that those tools are also understood in working with our residents? Does this make sense to you? Does this help you? So I think I would say in the prioritization, I'm a little bit long-winded on this, because we are a foundational services on how government operates, I would say utilizing all aspect of change management in order to best utilize the tool is a priority of ours, and that is an ongoing conversation that we barely scratched the surface at this point.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's a continuous reprioritization process.
Prioritization on a daily basis.
And on the other hand, a lot of these use cases you have to stick with for a while to see them really develop and have that change management take effect.
Yeah, and that's what makes I always said it's never a dull moment in what we do, because you have to cycle through, you have to iterate along the way. We don't get to pick 3 things that we do and be really good at it. Yeah. We would love to do that sometimes, right? But again, given the sheer size and all of the challenges the state of California deal with, you almost like 3 priority for today, you get momentum going, get it sustained, and then you pick another, few. So you're constantly rotating through.
Joe, how about on your side?
Well, fortunately, our prioritization is largely given to us, which I'm fortunate with respect to that, because we operate on the basis of this document called the National Defense Strategy, which outlines the defense priorities and really provides us our North Star and our guiding light for how we, really what we focus on, how we invest in the kinds of problems we're trying to solve. With respect to that, in terms of the problem of access to data and AI, one of the areas that I think that document has prioritized and we find to be a really compelling place is not just sharing within the DoD, but externally sharing, particularly with the United States allies and partners. When you read that document, more so than any national defense strategy before it, it outlines that the prioritization has to be not just being able to operate as a DoD internally, but to be able to share data more effectively with interagency partners across the federal government, with industry, and then with allies and partnered nations, but to do so in a secured way, in an assured way, so that we can continue to operate. So I would turn back to that document as really the one that drives our prioritization. Within the department, I think anybody who's worked in this space would be aware that our legacy acquisition systems and processes are not well designed to enable data access at scale. We tend to think of large platform as the way we procure things. We buy ships, we buy planes, we buy software in much the same way. So, prioritization for us is thinking through how we break through that and make it so that the data sharing and data access equities of those initiatives are prioritized and they're invested in, and the technology's there. We have an initiative, for instance, called the Joint All-Domain Command and Control Initiative at CDAO, where we're working this, apologies for the jargonism and acronym, it's called JADC2, but essentially it's a problem of just how we have our systems talk to each other. And I could go into detail about our approach to that, but it's really about how we build the technology, how we incentivize the creation of the right APIs, how we're doing data standards and governance across the department, how we're dealing with the, before we had the joint warfighting cloud, the lack of a department cloud, which has really hindered our access, I think, in the past, and we've moved past that. JWCC is now incredibly in-demand initiative that I think is going to move the needle in terms of solving some of these core data access and sharing problems. But I think all of those fundamentally drive our prioritization or the things we think about when we deal with data access and AI access problems.
And it's really helpful, I think, for all of us to think about, having the clarity of the priorities is not sufficient for driving the changes required to take advantage of everything that's happening, right? So this is a very nice example where, while clear, there's still all the rest of the data governance, the change management, the collaboration across the teams that need to be in place to have the impact. So Tammy, how about on your side? How do you deal with where to start and where to find a use case that matters in prioritization?
So for the Hawaii Department of Transportation, and I'm sure this is the same for all of departments of transportation, safety is our #1 priority. We're no longer going to be reactive, and that's why we partnered with Google with our safety analytics platform. We have safety data. We have this system called Shaka, and it basically reports all fatalities and major crashes to the federal government. But with partnering with Google, it takes large sets of data components, and it makes it where we can get crash data, we can get pedestrian and vehicle, where they walk and where people drive, where they're speeding, and we can create, or what AI and working with Google does for us is it creates patterns to show us where are these high impact areas, and to channel on that and move it to where there are same types of conflicts with pedestrians and vehicles, so that there's a pattern that we can see, so we can not anticipate, but do countermeasures in different areas rather than wait for, a crash or fatality to happen. With our climate, I don't know why I keep saying climate. With our climate insights platform, we know, that there are vulnerabilities with sea level rise, with water inundation. What we didn't know, and what working with Google has shown us is, take for example, rockfall. We partnered with the University of Hawaii and with consultants. We know the vulnerabilities, but what we don't know is where the debris from a rockfall event will land. I think it was in 2018 or maybe sooner, we had this project. It was because one of these rockfalls came down. We call it the Pali Highway, where there's tunnels, town-bound and windward-bound. So the town-bound tunnels, there was a rockfall. Thank goodness nobody got injured. I think the rock, it was humongous boulder. It landed and might have clipped a truck, but there was no accidents, no fatalities. But working with Google and these insights, it'll show us, where these debris would fall, and we can mitigate those types of real specific events.
That's a really nice example. I wasn't thinking about that in the context of prioritization, but the idea of real-time prioritization, which you have with the Department of Transportation in Hawaii, I think is a real nice example for many of us. There's a nice demo of this as well that you can see really the power of having that data in place and what it can do to get resources in the right place at the right time. So again, I think that's a powerful example of prioritization. You also mentioned, Tammy, the partnership, but I know all of these issues take a number of partnerships to deliver, or an ecosystem of support to make real. We have a number of partners, not only Google, in the room. What do you need from the people in the audience or the people listening to best help you achieve your mission objectives? And Tammy, we'll start with you.
Okay. So the partnerships that we have and that we need are just bringing, we do Department of Transportation stuff. I learned at the harbors, we have issues with coral, and we can't just take the coral, we don't know whether it's invasive or not, and plop it somewhere else. So I think those partnerships with different disciplines are so important. I think this administration is really, really visionary, and deputies, there are 4 of us, I was talking with Amanda earlier that our director has such a vision, and we as deputies, we work really hard to make it come true. In my shop, there's HR, we have procurement, just like Amy, we have a bunch of things, but on a smaller scale. And so partnering with, we have this project called Hybridge, and it's taking these unmanned drones, and it's cutting down and saving money with bridge inspections. So it's those types of partnerships that we forge to help us to do our work. Not that we're not doing our core function, but it helps us do our work streamline, quicker, so that we can reap the benefits that much sooner.
Good. So a broad ecosystem approach to achieve it. Joe, how about on your side?
If I could raise a specific challenge where I need help in this room, I'll take the opportunity. It's kind of the reason I really wanted to come here today and put out a pitch. It's the problem of generative AI, which I know we're the Supercharging AI panel here. The department established an organization about 3 weeks ago. It was chartered. For those who have not seen it, it's on the open internet. We're being very transparent of what we're doing. It's called Task Force Lima. It's the department's generative AI task force. I have the mission commander of Task Force Lima in the audience here today. He works for me, Captain Xavier Lugo, U.S. Navy. The challenge of generative AI is generative AI is going to challenge the department on many simultaneous fronts and axes that we're trying to figure out all at the same time. Both, and I think broadly, as you can imagine, we're concerned about both the enormous risks of the technology being misapplied, misused, being misunderstood in terms of its integration in our workflows, but at the same time, a normal potential but unrealized and unproven benefits to a massive enterprise that has the need to leverage AI to solve a number of its problems. So Task Force Lima is fairly new. It's about 3 weeks old, but what we're really trying to build, and where we really need industry involvement, is helping the DoD to understand technology that's evolved so rapidly. I'm here at Google, right? Attention is all you need, was 6 years old or whatever, but really since ChatGPT, we've seen the movement spread like wildfire across the department. And we're working on a number of sub-initiatives that deal with how we measure the performance of models and understand what are the metrics and frameworks to get to responsible AI, what's the strategy and guidance around these things, how are we building our infrastructure and managing our data to make it responsible, how we're working with industry, academia, and the open source community to responsibly integrate available technologies to meet department challenges. And I think more so than anything else, what are the use cases where this technology is most valuable, and really trying to tamper down on the idea that there's a monolithic AI out there called generative AI that can solve all the department's ills, and really start to think through the specific workflows and problems where the technology can be proven to have a validated and measured and understood output, and that aligns to the department's work with responsible AI. So this problem of generative is taking up a lot of our bandwidth right now, and it's an area of enormous challenge where we're going to need the integrated insights of the technology community to advise and assist the department, not just in terms of the delivery of your products, but in terms of the ramifications at a broad level of how this technology manifests in our department. So that's my ask today. And like any good Pentagon bureaucrat, I'm going to say, talk to him, who will answer your queries, Xavier Lugo, the commander of that team.
No, but it's so important. Again, your same point, Joe, of sort of you have the strategy laid out, but it comes down to the details of where we're going to start and how we're going to work together. So this notion of selecting the right use case as part of this roadmap for organizational readiness for supporting change management, I think is a great call to action for all of us working with the Department of Defense or any of our government agencies. How about on your side, Amy?
I would say not that California is being competitive or not, but I'm going to up on Joe on this. So you guys ready to take some notes in terms of more than one challenges that's going to put out here? I heard a sympathy clap here. So was that a good clap or a good clap? All right, let's get ready for this. So Joe was talking about this big use case and challenge on that. I would say to add on top of that, state of California obviously being really the innovation center to many of these in generative AI, it's a strong interest of the administration. I think there are a few things for those of you that are partners in the room that we're really, really looking for help with. But before I go there, just like any other, bureaucratic personnel here, I do also have an outstanding team. So Matthias, if you want to stand up and just wave your hand so you guys can recognize him.
Matthias.
He's the one to go to along with my colleague here, Christina, as well as our teams from OES and Cover California. 150 departments, likely many of them is going to explore some type of pilots, just as a way of that we could use this narrow use case to continue to learn what generative AI's benefits as well as risk along it, right? Start foremost, yes, the security side of it, we have a cybersecurity integration center, which Google is already a partner with. Need to know how do we have a good awareness of the risk, but how do we mitigate, right? To the extent possible that we have a responsible use from a privacy, from all of that. It's a big topic of ours. So for those who developer interesting for the responsible use of AI, talk to us about it. But doing so, by no means we want to stifle innovation. And it's on the opposite, is how do you innovate in a responsible manner? And that's why the state of California is going to look for partners to work on various narrow cases. Healthcare, huge part of it, right? The healthcare cost, in a way that how do we use AI as a way to perhaps supporting some back office, and I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there for people to think about. How do you apply the capability of generative AI into how we deliver service? Climate, obviously a big topic. We don't like wildfire in any manner, especially in California. So the projection or the prediction and how all of that goes, wildfire is a huge part of it. Transportation, as Tammy mentioned, we have a huge transportation infrastructure here, looking for ways to minimize the incidents that happens. I heard a statistic, which is not a good statistic, in the state of California, was that every hour there's 12 people killed in the state highway. Wow. That is a scary statistic. So my colleague, as the secretary with transportation, always show me anything we could do to help protect or increase the safety of our roadway, he's in. Wow. Right? So transportation is a huge part of it. Obviously, emergency services, the accessibility to make sure that in the moment of emergency response, what is the quickest, simplistic way to help our residents to safety? It's obviously an area that we always like to explore more. Workforce development, which is in my agency, right? To make sure that the state workforce as well as the general workforce, what is the outlook of what this generative AI would create in this disruption of industry moving forward, and how do we prepare our workforce to do so? So these just to name a few. Again, Matthias here probably has a laundry list. He would love to talk to partners as state of California can continue to explore to learn this.
Very helpful. Thank you, Amy. I would also ask the panel, there's a bunch of people in the audience that will take this content back and we hope do something with it. Mm-hmm. So what's your advice for those people in the audience or the listeners online to how to get started? You know, or maybe something you learned on your journey that you wish you knew before you started. So maybe Amy, we'll start with you.
I would say twofold. We are just, like I said, it's just like a sponge at the moment, absorb everything that we can learn. Anybody that would love to talk to us, call Matthias, to make sure, no, I'm kidding aside, we would love to set up some type of, a meet and greet, even a virtual. It's convenient for folks just to, to hear what you're thinking. For those of you that are looking for a contractual opportunity, getting to the state's procurement list, it's a very, very important first step to make sure that we are getting you ready at when the moment comes that state needs to start building these pilots. So I say get your company ready for that. But at the end of the day, we really looking at this is something that it's almost a personal responsibility for everyone involved to make sure that the rollout or the launch or the continual launch, as you say, of generative AI in a responsible manner. So from that aspect, whatever advice, suggestion, or getting yourself ready to work with the state of California, we're ready for it.
Very good. Joe?
Yeah, I would concur. We face many of the same challenges as my colleague from California. When we look at generative AI, I think we can all agree it's a technology that leaked from the laboratory, and largely I would say the department needs to move fast to be prepared for a future where it just is part of the way we do work today. And it really challenges the traditional sort of department process where we like to research a piece of technology, we validate it, we test it, we deploy it. There's assurance that it works. We're able to map its operational ramifications and risk in really compelling ways. And there's frameworks to be able to evaluate these things. We don't have that here because I didn't come up through the technology track. I'm a Marine. I came up through the use case track. I started my career as a young Marine intel officer, and the temptation here is going to be enormous, particularly given when we're talking the large language models, parts of generative AI, that the output is just so semantically rich and compelling that it could be easily misutilized. And so where we really need help is thinking through those challenges. It's certainly a team sport. The department we have ethical AI principles that we adhere to. We also have a number of directives. Many of them were written in advance of these technologies, and we're thinking through the responsible AI ramifications, but also just in terms of what we need to invest in to get this right in a world where the technology is widely available in places outside of the department, which is not the way we typically operate. So to the extent I could put that to the audience here to come back to us and offer ideas and suggestions. I know your question is, how do I get involved? We're working on that right now with our initiative that's about 3 weeks old. There will be the opportunity for industry participation. If you are government and you're listening, reach out to me today, and we'll begin to incorporate you into our group that's focusing on these problems.
That's really nice. I mean, we will all learn together in this, so great advice. Tammy, I know you have some experiences and lessons learned also. Do you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, so we didn't start with AI. We built upon an existing foundation. It really complements what we're currently doing. We think that it just makes us grow as an agency to be forward-thinking and not being so reactionary. But I think that with this type of technology, we have to be really honest and forthcoming with our community members. We have to tell them exactly what data we're using and what the purpose we're using it for. We have a project, and it's called the Nimitz Traffic Signal Modernization Project. And basically, we're optimizing the traffic signals. Right now, the technology is we have cameras on poles, I think it's zip tied to poles, and we have these like traffic counting pucks in the asphalt. And basically, we're going to be building on that foundation using, working with Google, using AI, and we're going to be able to see like the vehicles as well as the pedestrians. And of course, everybody will be concerned about what are you using this data for and why. For us, technology is agnostic. We don't care really. We're one step removed from that. So we have to be careful with explaining all of the privacy concerns to the members of the public. I think we have to tell them that we don't care about your trip, really. All we care is if the behavior or it's making our roads unsafe.
Yeah, you had also gone through changes around your infrastructure to be able to support a future that is different than how the Department of Transportation was operating today. So sometimes when we look more broadly at where we're going, the North Star, the priorities, as Joe talked about, can be well documented, but takes changes across the entire organization. And this investment in the foundation includes an investment in skills. And so one of the things that my team did earlier, actually a couple weeks ago, is we had an AI summer school on how marketing will fundamentally change. And one of the opportunities we came up with, we did sort of a science fair of use cases that will absolutely change the way we work, our roles, our organization, and our ecosystem. And as part of that, we looked at how music might change. And we wanted to honor Tammy and the residents of Hawaii with one of our winning science fair projects in using Gen AI to write a song for Hawaii. So I will play that in a minute, but I wanted to first give you an opportunity. If you want to find out more about the work we're doing in public sector, please take a look here and, of course, interact with folks in the audience. These use cases will be accelerated through all of us working together and doing your own version of a science fair. We're just announcing another partnership with George Mason University that is helping to provide skills in the Washington, D.C. area for their first-year students. So they will be ready for doing internships around cybersecurity and AI even after their first year of undergraduate. And then from there, building that out into supporting the broader community. So these are the kind of partnerships, just another example of the kind of partnerships that our times of change call for. So with that, I'd like to really thank you three, Amy, Joe, and Tammy. It's been an honor to have you here and a real privilege for the audience as well. So with that, let's play the song. And if you're so moved, please consider donating to Hawaii.